This afternoon to the annual meeting, the 41st annual meeting of the Kiowa Island Community Association. And before we officially call, or before the chair officially calls the meeting to order, I'd just like to make a couple of introductions. First of all, I want to thank our friends at the town of Kiowa for providing their space here today. It's a beautiful new facility. We look forward to reopening the Sandcastle this summer, and I hope that we can return the favor to the town at some point. I also like at the annual meeting each year to recognize any former board members who are in attendance. They know they know why Dave Singer is smiling, and just want to ask former board members to please stand and be recognized for their service to the community. Thank you very much. And while we're at it, since we're at the town, I see the mayor, and I know I saw at least one council member. Chris, anyone else? Thank you for your service to the community as well. I also would like to recognize some of the key KICA staff folks who are here today. They are walking in. It's like a fashion show here. Dave Ackey is our Director of Land and Lakes Management. I've lost count, I think 27 years. Ed Monahan's our Director of Livability. 10 years, right? 10 years. And 5 years, Will Connor, our Director of Major Repair and Replacement. Jane Ovenden is in the front row. You'll hear from her, but she is our Director of Finance and Administration. And if you don't know Shannon White, who greeted you coming in the door, as our Director of Operations, you haven't been here that long. But thank all of them for all the hard work they do each and every day to run the association. I'd like to now introduce the current board members. Starting on your left at the end is Kathy Pumphrey. Representing Kiowa Partners is Townsend Clarkson. Current board vice chair is Lynn Morgenstern. Current chair Dave Singer. And last on the right is board member and treasurer Ben Cheatham.
Okay, so we will call the meeting to order. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's been my privilege to serve as the KICA board chair for the past year, and I'd like to officially call this meeting to order. First, we'll appoint our parliamentarian, and for today's meeting, it will be Mr. Ian Freeman of Walker, Grissett, Freeman, and Linton. Ian provides our staff and board legal advice from time to time, and we welcome him here today. Thank you. Next, the minutes of the March 3rd, 2017 annual meeting. The minutes are in the form of a verbatim transcript taken by a court reporter. Do I have a motion to have these minutes approved as written?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the minutes of last year's annual meeting are duly approved. Jimmy will now provide the certification of quorum and explain the election voting process.
Thank you, Dave. And before I do that, is there anyone here that wanted to vote in person here today and has not done so yet? Okay, great. While we were sweating it up until the last few days, I'm pleased to report that we achieved quorum with the voting that occurred prior to today's meeting. The quorum requirement to conduct the meeting and elect directors is 51%. On the covenant amendment, the quorum requirement is 51% this time due to the fact that the question was asked at the last meeting, yet quorum was not achieved. For those interested in the specifics, total voting units, meaning properties on Kiowa available in this election, were 4,432. 86 of those were deemed ineligible for non-payment of assessments, leaving us with 4,346 eligible voting units. Valid votes cast or voting units cast were 2,256 for a quorum of 51.9%. I am pleased that quorum is certified and that the meeting can continue, but would just like to continue to stress how important it is in these elections to achieve quorum and to participate. We have done everything possible over the last couple of years to provide additional voting options. Online participation has gone up significantly. We've added an option to be able to call in your vote. And obviously we still have the paper ballot process and voting in person at the meeting. I would encourage you, if you're still using those paper ballots, to consider the online or the call-in option in the future, because if we were not to achieve quorum, we'd have to do this all over again. And one of the candidates told me yesterday, said, however this turns out, I'm going to be glad that it's over, because it's a long process. And it's long for everyone. It's the candidates and the staff and so forth. So I'm glad that we have quorum, but we just barely made it. So I'd like to now, since the meeting can continue, I'd like to turn the floor over to our treasurer, Ben Cheatham.
All right. First, I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to serve you. And this is my first year as a board member and a treasurer, and I just want to provide a general overview of what this has meant to me and what I've gone to accomplish. Coming on the board and being asked to be the treasurer was an honor, and it enabled me to fast track and getting up to speed. And I'll quote my father, as he taught me. He said, "Follow the money and you'll learn everything about the operations." I've approached this position maybe in a little slightly different manner. There was really no job description that came along or that I was given, or a manual per se of exactly what I was supposed to do. And so I sat back and I looked at it and I said, we are a board of guidance, not governance. And with that understanding, I thought that it was crucial to take the superb staff that we've got within the KICA organization and allow them to present the treasurer's report to you, which Jane will be doing here shortly. I looked at it from the standpoint of, Jane lives the day-to-day operations, and she knows it. So whom better to present those things to y'all? So going back on the treasurer's role, what I tried to do is say, I'm an owner on the island. What is important to me being an owner on the island? Well, I think from a KICA standpoint, we want to ensure that we got good stewardship, making sure that our monies are being spent the way that they should. I want to make sure that we're investing and collecting those monies as we should on the island. And I also want to be confident that we're set up to handle and maintain what I consider to be our island quality of life. So far this year, I've pushed Jane to take a more active role in presenting and contributing within the Finance Committee. We have a very intelligent group of folks on the Finance Committee that have contributed a lot of time and a lot of effort on behalf of this island and the island members. This Finance Committee has really been the brains and the champion of our accomplishments. And I would like to just take a couple minutes and recognize those who are on the Finance Committee. If you're here, I'd ask that you'd stand as I give your name. Townsend Clarkston. Townsend, is a board member as well on the Finance Committee. And last year when I was asked to be the treasurer, he agreed to come on this committee and bring his years of knowledge to help get me up to speed. And Townsend, I greatly appreciate the efforts and support that you've given. Jeff Eagle, Tom Lindstrom, Ralph Mastriano, and I apologize, Mastriango, Angelo, I'm sorry. Dave Morley, Charlie Bianco, Nancy Smith. And Nancy did a really good job of giving me some guidance as far as insight and assistance when we were doing our bond investments. Martin Wardle, Bill Carney, and Jane Ovington, who is the KICA Director of Finance and Admin. Without those folks, you know, they were really the brains behind the operation, and it was my job to more or less guide them in the direction I thought we should go. This year we've got 3 of those folks rotating off, and that would be Jeff, Tom, and Ralph. We've got 2 new members coming on board, Jim McDonald and Dave Mose, that'll be joining our group. They've got a strong financial background, and both of them are eager to come on and assist. And with the assistance of these folks, we have accomplished large goals in a short amount of time that we were together. If you look at the Finance Committee, probably meets on the average about 8 to 10 times a year. And we did things this past year, like we established several new policies, like a debt policy and a revenue policy. You know, these policies define our membership needs for today. These policies can be changed. They're living documents. And if they need to be changed, they can be changed for the future. And I looked at it from the biggest standpoint is that although they can be changed, they need to have a discussion, or the board will need to have a discussion to change them in the future. And that was really the driving force to establishing some of these, just to ensure that we had communication and people were discussing the items at hand. This year, we elected to hire an investment firm to manage our reserves. We interviewed 3 completely different firms. We narrowed it down to 2. And our committee was really split 50-50 on which one to select, and it came down to Vanguard and Moneta. And after listening to both sides and discussions on the board, we selected Moneta. And I guess from my standpoint, the main reason we selected Moneta was really more about the current investment policy that those that had served on this board had put in place in the past. And I felt like Moneta was more in line with that investment policy. And I thought that, you know, with Moneta, we could at least maintain that policy, where I didn't feel like we probably could maintain the investment policy with the others that we were speaking with. Another highlight of this year was the audit performed by Robinson and Grant and Company. It was presented to the Finance Committee, was it last week? By Michael Putich. There were a couple changes in the way that we classified a couple of our assets, but overall, in a private conversation, he gave our staff a superior rating in the stewardship of our funds. So with that being said, it now gives me great pleasure to hand over the Treasurer's reporting to Jane Ovington.
Thanks, Ben. And thank you all for the opportunity to recap this past year. Again, my name is Jane Ovington. My title is Director of Finance and Administration, and I've been with KICA since June of 2016. This slide shows a quote that hangs in my office. Some of my coworkers enjoy teasing me about it, but I am a self-admitted left-brained accountant. I'm married to a left-brained accountant. I have a son who's an accountant, and we have another son who went rogue. He's a credit analyst. So we sort of speak the same language, and many of you are probably left-brained like me, but I know many of you are not. So I'll try to keep this report high level. Please call or email, though, if you really want the detailed version. At the beginning of this year, the Finance Committee was asked to tackle 2 issues: to evaluate some of our long-standing vendor relationships and to focus on ways to better manage KICA's reserve funds. To that end, during 2017, we requested proposals for property and casualty insurance independent audit services, and in the investment management of the reserve funds. As a result of those RFPs, the board approved Aon Risk Services as the insurance provider, Moneta Group as the investment manager, and Robinson Grant for the audit services. Aon and Moneta were new to KICA in those roles, while existing provider Robinson Grant retained the audit engagement. As Ben mentioned, the 2017 audit is complete and was shared with the Finance Committee last week. The audit report will be available on KICA's website in the next week or two. This slide is a snapshot of the operating or undesignated funds. Undesignated is the description you'll see in the audit report. Actual operating revenue exceeded budget by $964,000, while actual expenses exceeded budget by $444,000. I've bulleted the unbudgeted items below. You can see that the IRMA assessment added just over $1 million to revenue, while Matthew and IRMA combined to add $617,000 to total operating expenses. If storm-related amounts were removed, KICA operated with a net surplus of $595,000 in the undesignated funds. Because timing of both assessments and repairs make it difficult to see the impact of storms, I wanted to take this chance to show you the results of the assessments both for Matthew and Irma. Hurricane Matthew hit Kiowa in October of 2016, and the cleanup was funded by an assessment of $250 per improved property. The assessment total was $1.1 million, but expenses reached nearly $1.5 million. KICA undesignated funds absorbed the $346,000 excess. Tropical Storm Irma hit Kiowa on September 11th of 2017, and the assessment for cleanup and repairs was recorded in November. That assessment amount equaled $225 per improved property. Repairs are ongoing, but based on current estimates, KICA will absorb $60,000 of the expense total. Between the two storms, KICA repaired or cleaned up $400,000 more in damage than was assessed. This chart shows the breakdown of sources of operating income. Note the general assessment and the IRMA assessment represent more than 3/4 of the total. The Matthew assessment is not shown because that was recorded in 2016. Here I've demonstrated the distribution of total operating expenses. In 2017, land and lakes represent more than 1/3 of KICA's operating budget. This percentage is higher than normal due to the storm-related costs. For you left-brained people out there, you might be interested to know that in 2017, KICA spent $425,000 on water in order to irrigate 585 acres. That was just for the water. On top of that, $40,000 was spent on electricity to run the irrigation systems, $33,000 on repairs or new parts, and there are 4 full-time irrigation technicians on payroll to keep it all operating. Now we get to the big dollar funds, major repairs and replacements, which are termed designated funds in the audit report. For 2017, MR&R revenue exceeded budget by $87,000, while expenses exceeded budget by $2 million. Again, the bulleted items are the unbudgeted pieces of that equation. Matthew, Irma, and the Sandcastle renovation represent $1.5 million of that $2 million excess. The reserve was made whole for those expenditures at year-end by way of transfers from the operating fund. And those transfers are not reflected in my slides, but can be seen at the bottom of the 2017 audited statement of activity or income statement. The cost of paving the Kiowa Island Parkway was covered by the MR&R reserve. Here you see the MR&R income over the past 6 years. The two major sources of MR&R revenue are the reserve assessment, which is currently $300 per improved property, and contributions to reserve. The reserve assessment was initiated in 2013 and now represents roughly 35% of MR&R funding, and that's the bottom component of those columns. Contributions to reserve, or CTR, are provided for in KICA's covenants and are collected on each property sale. Last year, CTR of $1.48 million was collected on property exchanges. The median CTR for the past 10 years, however, is $1.426 million. And CTR has only exceeded $1.5 million in 3 of those 10 years. For 2017, CTR represents 43% of total MR&R revenue. Now, the board could see that CTR and the reserve assessments were not able to fund the repairs and replacements needed on Kiowa. And in 2017, they designated $500,000 of vehicle access fees for use by the MR&R fund. And those can be seen in that last column on the top in the green. Here you can see how the MR&R dollars were spent last year. Drainage repairs represent the single largest outlay at nearly $1.6 million. If you add in emergency expenses, which are overwhelmingly related to sinkholes and drainage repairs, then drainage expenses are $2 million of the $5.8 million total. Street resurfacing, including repaving the parkway and repairing areas washed out during Irma, are another $1.5 million of that total. The remaining third includes bridge repairs, sandcastle renovations, leisure trail resurfacing, and so forth. Here I've shared 3 of the 2018 goals for the Finance Committee, and I recognize that the new board may have more to add to this list. I'll close by emphasizing that both the Finance Committee and the KICA staff take the mission statement phrase, exceptional stewardship, very seriously. And I'll repeat that I'd be happy to provide any of you left-brained owners with more information about anything presented. Thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Jane, for that outstanding report. And I'd like to echo the comments that both you and Ben made about our Finance Committee. And I'd also like to thank you and your staff for the outstanding job that y'all do each and every day. As was mentioned a little over a week ago, our external auditor made a report to our Finance Committee and board. And I was awfully proud to hear the comments that they made, not only about the accuracy of our financial statements, but the fact that they largely attribute that to the high caliber of people we have working on our team. So thank you so much. There we go. As we move into my report, I'd like to also once again thank you all for being here on this beautiful afternoon for our annual meeting. I know that there are many other places that you could be on a pretty day like today, and so we appreciate your interest in the community. For the next 20 minutes or so, I'd like to give you an update on the state of KICA and share with you some of the things that we have tackled over the course of the past year or plan to work on in the upcoming board term. 2017 was certainly another busy year, as they all are. But it was once again a year of significant unplanned events. whether it was planning for and responding to another natural disaster, or working with the Conservancy and others to put together the parcel trade referendum. These activities required significant attention and time from our board and staff, in addition to all the things we were already working on. But aside from these extraordinary events, it was a busy and successful year in terms of pursuing our strategic objectives. I won't discuss them all because it would double my time here, but I'd like to share a few of those successes with you. Whenever we talk about our strategic objectives, it's useful to reflect on the mission of the association to ensure the things that we're pursuing are in furtherance of that mission. So here it is. The Kiowa Island Community Association exists to preserve and enhance the quality of life and property values of its members. This includes taking the leadership role in ensuring that Kiowa Island's unique look and feel is preserved by exceptional stewardship of its resources, which provide for a beautiful, safe, well-maintained, and friendly community. I hope that you agree with that mission, as it's the basis for how we develop and pursue our strategic objectives. I believe that 2017 in particular is a year that reflects strong focus on the strategic plan, and I invite you to review our progress. First up, KICA will work collaboratively with the town, the developer, and the resort for the benefit of association members. You know, there's nothing like a looming natural disaster to force collaboration, but I am pleased to report that it isn't forced at all. The spirit of cooperation between the entities has been wonderful, but I'm sure that everyone who's been involved in Hurricane Matthew and Tropical Storm Irma over the last 2 years would be totally fine with a very dull fall in 2018. That said, I cannot thank everyone enough for pulling together during these difficult challenges. And in particular, I'd like to once again salute Town Administrator Stephanie Tillerson for her leadership during these events. She's calm, collected, and most importantly, she doesn't care who gets the credit, which is a recipe for great success. As a result, I think that the working relationship between the town and KICA staffs is as strong as it's been in a very long time, perhaps ever. Another opportunity for collaboration with other entities this year was the Parcel Trade Initiative. Every entity was on board, as well as the Conservancy, who played a huge and important role too. The effort was collaboration at its finest, and was especially gratifying to have the membership vote overwhelmingly in favor of the proposal, with more than 87% of people voting yes. The association shall maintain its infrastructure, facilities, and landscaping at a high level, and KICA shall continuously evaluate trends, new opportunities, and different approaches to community objectives. 2017 saw the largest drainage project in KICA history, and it came in on time and under budget. This work is a continuation of the significant drainage system repairs and improvements that have been underway for the last 5 years or so. While there are still many smaller projects, repairs to be made, I'm proud to report that we have now repaired or replaced all of the large metal pipes, the 48-inch, 54-inch, and 60-inch diameter metal pipes that run underneath KICA roads. This work over the past 5 years or so has totaled just north of $6 million. And I attribute our increased pace of repairs to several factors. Will Connor, who I introduced earlier, joined KICA 5 years ago as our Director of Major Repairs. He is the first professional engineer that we have ever had in that role, and his expertise has allowed for acceleration of many projects that would have taken much longer in prior years. Will has also sought creative solutions to lower cost and accelerate these repairs. The use of spin casting, for example, is a result of Will's efforts, and has allowed us to accomplish more for less money and far less disruption to the community. Finally, the timing is such that these repairs have become, quite frankly, urgent. Many of the pipes had reached the end of their useful life, and there was no way in the world that we were going to keep up. Prior to his arrival, drainage repairs lagged as staff expertise was insufficient for the task at hand. A year or so after Will came on board, the benefit of that skill set became so obvious that we hired a second professional engineer on our team, which has allowed us to accomplish even more. Drainage will continue to be a major point of emphasis for at least another 5 years, but the largest and most expensive and complicated and disruptive projects are behind us. Another area where we've sought new ways to tackle old problems is through our application of a road rejuvenation product. About 20% of our roads are treated, and we plan to treat the majority of our remaining neighborhood streets this year. The technology is designed to significantly extend the useful life of a road, which over time has the potential to save enormous sums of money. We've done some lab testing of the roads that were treated last year, and initial reports suggest that the product is working as advertised, and we remain very encouraged by these possibilities. This slide really could have been included in the previous section related to cooperation between entities, but I decided to place it here for a few reasons, but primarily because it's the holy grail of West Beach revitalization, an initiative that KICA launched around 2011. This effort sought to encourage reinvestment in West Beach neighborhoods. KICA reinvested in property that it owned and worked with others, including a number of regimes, to spruce up buildings, landscaping, and signage. It was always thought, however, that the biggest catalyst for neighborhood improvement would be the ultimate redevelopment of resort properties, including the old Inn site, the Cougar Point Clubhouse, the Straw Market, and the other residual parcels owned by the resort. As the pace of their planning picked up steam over the last year or so, it became apparent that there were tremendous opportunities to improve the functionality, safety, and appearance of the road and leisure trail network in this part of the island. This work, however, would have to be funded by the resort, and Roger Warren and his team were eager to work with KICA and developed a plan that's mutually beneficial by replacing the awkward intersection of Kiowa Beach Drive and Shipwatch Road with a roundabout, and by moving the dangerous leisure trails completely out of this intersection. As the resort continues their planning, we expect additional infrastructure improvements that will occur on their nickel, not ours. I know this is kind of hard to see, so I've blown up what that's going to look like starting here pretty soon. And what the green lines represent are the temporary traffic patterns while that roundabout is being constructed. So to orient you, this is Shipwatch Road right here, and it'll be closed for a period of time, and traffic will have to come around what is now the Straw Market location over to here. This phase is expected to take 4 to 5 months. Obviously, once construction of the roundabout is complete, then we'll have a much better and more efficient road system there at that intersection, which has always been pretty awkward. The other real benefit that you'll see long term is instead of a leisure trail dumping straight into this intersection, leisure trails all move around the outside of the roundabout, which we think will be a tremendous improvement. Next objective is to continuously improve association facilities and programs, including expansion where deemed appropriate. Obviously, the big one is that we're working on right now are the improvements to the sandcastle. And that project is roughly $4.5 million, which is represented by about $3.9 million in remodeling and new construction expense, and then another $600,000 or so of things like replacement of the roof, which is original to the building and was in dire need. It's nice to be able to do that while the facility is closed. There are other items such as parking lot repairs and drainage repairs and so forth that are a part of this project. So here's a plan view of one of the signature features of the remodeled sandcastle, which is relocation of the bar from that asphalt parking lot view to an ocean view. And that's what it looks like in plan. Here's what it looks like today. Still have to have a little bit of imagination, but that's under construction. And this picture was taken with an iPhone, so it's not particularly clear, but standing there, I promise you, you can see the waves crashing on the beach. It's a beautiful view now, and it's unbelievable the breeze that blows through there with some of that vegetation cleared out. Here's an aerial of what it looks like about a week or so ago. You can see there the outline of the new adult pool. That's something that a few years ago when we surveyed, did a very comprehensive survey on amenities that ranked up there very high as something that people were interested in, a place to separate the noisy activity of children and basketballs flying all over the place and so forth, with a quiet place for adults. I know that the new pool is kind of the exciting feature here, but when I look at that picture, I see that new roof, and that's very exciting to me. Here is that bar that I was just showing you along the side of the building. Again, a direct view out to the ocean. And a load of lumber was delivered actually yesterday afternoon to start construction of the new bathhouse, which will include an outdoor shower and restrooms to service that adult pool. Construction well underway. Obviously, the first phase is very exciting. When you have demolition, you see a lot of change happen. And then you get into mechanicals. It seems like it'll never end with plumbing and electrical and so on and so forth. But it is moving right along. One of the things that became very important to us as we planned this was to make sure that this oceanside facility had ocean views and to really take advantage of the site. And this picture is taken from the location of where, if you're familiar, where you used to check in when you walk in the front door. I'm standing at that check-in area and looking toward the beach. When it's finished, all of those boards will come down, and those will be glass doors, and so you'll be able to look straight through all the way across the new pool and see the ocean. Here's a view standing in that fitness room, looking across the pool toward the beach. Finally, as we were deep into our planning process, we wanted to make sure that we allocated sufficient resources to ensure that when we start to put the place back together, that we don't have the hodgepodge of thrift furniture and things like that that accumulated over the years. We wanted our finishes, including the fabrics and the furniture and the light fixtures and so forth, to be well coordinated, look nice and representative of the KICA brand. And so we're very excited that Lauren Sanchez Interior Design partnered with us, and I think you'll be really excited when you see the result of her work in just a few months. The project right now is on time. In fact, the building itself, we could be looking at things like carpet and finishes in the next 6 weeks. Obviously, you see the current state of the pool, which is, it's on time, but will be closer to that July completion date than the rest of it. But very excited about that project, and it's something that's been talked about for a really, really long time. One other thing I'd like to mention on improving association facilities, we bought the old town hall more than a year ago from the town. We call it Beachwalker Center now. But it really didn't become our own until the town moved out last summer. And it's significant that KICA is now assured a permanent home, and valuable community gathering space has been added, not only to help us through this transition of the Sandcastle being closed, but also going forward. Anyone who's tried to book a room for a class or a club or a group meeting at the Sandcastle over the last few years know that sometimes it's very hard to get space. So that's a tremendous asset for the community. Another strategic objective is to continuously plan for leadership succession. And Ben touched on this, but significant work has happened this year on governance policies, debt, reserve, name storm, boardwalks, working on revenue, conveyance, amenities, and security. Those are things that are ongoing. But the benefit of this is to provide some consistency from year to year. In a few minutes, I'm going to announce the results of the director election, and 2/3 of the elected board members will change. And that happens every year. And so having good governance policies in place ensures that there's consistency for those of us on the staff that have to execute the plan, as well as all of you in the community to have an opportunity to know what you should expect in terms of the association's philosophy. Doesn't mean that future board cannot change those policies, but at least they have to sit down and have a conversation and get 4 out of 7 people to say, yeah, it deserves to be changed. We also have done a lot of work on revising the new board member orientation process. We'll be rolling that out over the next few weeks, but the goal there was to make sure that new board members are able to hit the ground running and try to shorten the learning curve as much as possible. We've made excellent progress on our management structure. When Jane Ovenden came to us as the director of finance back in 2016, I didn't know at the time that a year later, our long-time director of human resources, Maggie Hawkins, would retire. Jane had performed exceedingly well in her position, was clearly capable of additional responsibilities, and it allowed us to reorganize our management team to give her additional responsibility. And so with the senior team, including Jane and Shannon White and Tammy McAdory, who has been with us for 28 years, and of course Holly, we have a management structure that is set up well to execute on a very high level. And then finally, the board spent a lot of time this year establishing some specific criteria for how I get evaluated in my role, to give me quality feedback, to know what the board sees as the strengths and weaknesses of my performance, which is very helpful to me. Proper stewardship of association resources will allow the community to maintain its financial stability. Jane already mentioned that we reviewed several of our key financial partners this year, insurance, audit, and investments, to make sure we're getting the best service for the best price. And we did make changes in 2 out of 3 of those areas. We've also already been mentioned, we're further professionalizing our investment approach and taking advantage of a broader array of investment vehicles so that we can preserve our purchasing power in the reserve fund. And we are right now sitting in corporate bonds and cash, losing the inflation race. And so we need to do better. We need to do better and at worst preserve our current purchasing power. And then finally, this doesn't happen a lot and doesn't mean it will happen in the future, but in 2018 we passed a budget with no assessment increase. We felt we were able to accomplish everything that we needed to accomplish without having to raise your assessments, and we're particularly happy to be able to do that after 2 straight years of additional assessments related to storms. Another strategic objective is to continuously look for ways to communicate with a diverse membership, which is comprised overwhelmingly of owners whose primary residence is elsewhere. And you see on the right hand of the screen, we have a myriad of ways to interact with our members, but we're always looking for more. And over the past years, we introduced live streaming of our meetings, all board meetings and a number of other meetings. There could be someone sitting in Hong Kong right now watching us. We're pleased to be able to offer this service, and we'd like to make it more robust and more interactive if we can. We've also introduced easier to understand financial reporting. We are a complex organization, but we've tried our best to present financial statements in a way that make it easier for those people who have that opposite side of the brain like me to understand them clearly. As part of our policy development process, we now, when we have a draft policy, we share those with the community and ask for input. And then finally, we've used electronic surveys from time to time this year on specific topics, and we'd like to do that more. So that list it's not a total picture of the work we took on in 2017, but I think it gives a perspective on the broad array of issues that are tackled over the course of a year. And what I'm most proud of, and when I think back on 2017, is that we checked some of the things off the list that have been lingering for a long, long time. We've talked for a long time about doing something related to amenities. There have been 2 attempts to expand our amenity offerings beyond the limits of the sandcastle. The community has said no both times. And so we made the decision that we were going to make the best of the assets that we have, and worked very hard to get a plan put together, and the board approved it on July the 28th, I think, which is amazing to think where we are in construction when that plan was approved, July the 28th. The other thing that has lingered out there for a really long time was this issue that resulted in the parcel trade. That goes back more than 10 years, and for the last 5 years has been nothing but expensive litigation. And so a lot of people have wrestled with that issue, and I'm glad we were able to put it to bed this year for once and for all, and for the benefit of the community. Now, more than 2 full months into 2018, we're hard at work on a number of objectives. The board held a strategic planning session in January and agreed to carry over several items that were left over from 2017. Sandcastle completion is obviously the big one, but a few other items. But in terms of 2018 additional priorities, what'd I do? The board asked us to make sure that we're routinely talking about these 3 things. Number 1, technology updates and upgrades, making sure that we're utilizing technology to the best of our ability, whether that has to do with security gate systems or a better website or whatever the case may be. The board wants to hear about technology opportunities throughout the year. The second one is something that I talked a lot about in the budget process, and that is employee retention and attraction. It is becoming harder and harder to hire people to come out to Kiowa to work, particularly at the lower end of the wage scale. Wages are certainly an issue, they always are, but the growing issue is the fact that the cost of housing and the traffic, which I believe are related, are making it more and more difficult to get people to come all the way here to Kiowa. And so we're going to have to be creative in trying to tackle some of those problems. An example, a recently implemented example, is that we've just switched our security officers from 8-hour shifts to 12-hour shifts. It's a longer day, but it means they come to Kiowa only 7 times in 2 weeks. And so it gives them more time off, it's less trips to Kiowa. And so we're going to be looking at a lot of opportunities like that to make sure that we can continue to attract people to come to work here, because it is a growing challenge. I started driving to Kiowa from my home downtown almost 6 years ago, and I used to feel bad for the people heading in the other direction that were sitting in traffic trying to get off the island. Now it's both ways, and it seems to get worse every day. The last part, and this is something that you'll hear a lot about this year and probably more in the summer or fall, and that's strategic planning and a community engagement process as a part of that. Our strategic plan was last approved, or was last rewritten in 2015. Each board's taken a look at it. But later this year, we will have a facilitator conduct some community meetings to get input on that strategic plan, to test the things that we think are important, and to get your input on that, and then conduct a survey. Once the results of that strategic plan are complete, the board will determine whether or not a more robust rewrite is needed. The last thing that I want to talk about before turning this over to Dave is the final part of our mission statement. Included in our mission is to be a friendly community. Some may say that that's an unusual thing to have in a mission statement, but I don't think so at all. In fact, I'd argue it's really important and something that we should all embrace. With the rancor in society these days, and in particular, the things that people seem more willing to say electronically, whether it's in an email or on social media, the anger and the level of civility in our culture seems to be on a decline. We seem to so quickly lose sight of the things that bind us together and make snap judgments about people or issues without taking the time to get to know them or understand the facts. Our mission on Kiowa ought to be something different. It's a special place. We recognize that not every person here is super wealthy, but being on Kiowa signifies some level of success or good fortune that's worthy of being thankful for. We're able to make memories here in a spectacularly beautiful place that's unlike anywhere else on earth. Like any family, we'll have our disagreements, but if we remain focused on the big picture, the things that bind us together, the rare beauty of this place, the good fortune that brought us here together, the fellowship opportunities with family and friends. If we remember these things, we'll be better equipped to live out that mission of being a friendly community. My preacher shared a great quote recently when discussing how church families always quarrel unnecessarily about minor differences and lose sight of why they come to church in the first place. The quote is attributed to an early 17th century German theologian who said, "In essentials, unity. In non-essentials, liberty. And in all things, charity." What a wonderful guide, and I think it can be applied here. It's my hope that we can reaffirm our commitment to this critically important part of our mission. Part of being friendly is giving the benefit of the doubt and not making assumptions about people, and that starts with me. In that vein, I want to share a couple comments about Dave Singer. When I think back on the past year, it's clear to me that many of our successes are attributed to his leadership. But I'm not sure that's something that I would have predicted when he joined the board 2 years ago. Back then, I wasn't so sure about him, and I assumed he and I might have a hard time getting along. And I think it's safe to say he wasn't sure about me either. He was admittedly skeptical about a number of things, and I assume maybe skeptical of me too. And then this wonderful thing happened. We took time to get to know each other. Instead of making assumptions, we talked, asked questions, considered the other's perspective. We still haven't always agreed, but discussing our disagreements has been productive as opposed to antagonistic. And I think there's a lot to learn in my own example. As I got to know him, I developed enormous respect for his intellect and expertise, an unusual ability to quickly focus like a laser on the real issue at hand while filtering out unimportant details. I can't count the number of times I've been ready to dig my heels in on something that I knew was right. But after a conversation with Dave, I've come to realize life is just too short. Let's focus on the real issue and not waste so much time being distracted. And this skill drives his steadfast commitment to getting things done and ensuring that perfect doesn't become the enemy of good. He's taught me a lot in a short time about being an effective executive. and his wise counsel has given me a unique perspective on why he enjoyed success in his own career. I consider myself lucky to have had the opportunity to work with him, as I know there are many people who pay a lot of money for executive coaches, and I've gotten it all for free. Dave, you're leaving us better than you found us. Kiowa thanks you for that, and you're leaving me better than you found me, and I thank you. We're going to miss your service, but I have your phone number and I know where you live. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in expressing our appreciation to Dave Singer for his service.
Wow, appreciate that. Thank you very much. I have to admit that when I joined the board, we did have a very similar sense of concern about each other, but it really did work out exactly as Jimmy said. And the one thing I'd like to make sure that everybody knows, I've had a lot of experience dealing with large public companies and smaller companies and working with a lot of executives and a lot of executive teams. And I will say that we are really lucky to have the quality of folks that run KICA up and down the board, and very few organizations of our size have folks this good running the organization. So a big hand of applause to them. Thank you. I guess what the old joke is that the best 2 days in a boater's life is the day that his first day and his last day with the boat. And I think probably the KICA board is pretty similar, except I'm not sure the first day is quite as much fun as getting a boat. I would Jimmy really talked about all the key things that were accomplished this year, and I was honored to be a small part of that, and the whole board together helped focus KICA on things that ended up getting done. Jimmy brought the vast majority of things forward that needed to be done, and we just worked with him to give him some perspective and support. So really, the staff and Jimmy deserve most of the credit for what happened this year. The one thing I will say is that we are in great financial shape. Also, in addition to having a great staff, we are in great financial shape. You saw the high-level numbers. A couple things to recognize. We spend about $2,000 per year per property for what we get from KICA. That is less than most communities that have as much stuff as we have. So I think to start with, the amount of money we pay relative to what we get is pretty reasonable. Second thing is it's great that we have the financial stewardship to actually not take an increase when an increase is not needed. They're able to do what they do and make sure that they're doing things efficiently so that we don't have to automatically take money and increase the fees every year. But we are in financially solid position. Our reserve is fine. We've got a very thoughtful approach to our MR&R, so the amount that's coming in versus the amount that's going out, projected forward, and including the amount we have set aside. It's very thoughtful. It's a very good approach. But if there's ever a problem, we don't have to take the risk that we go to the community and ask for money and the money's not there, because we don't have to vote to increase the dues if money was needed for a particular reason. We can go back and get about $1.5 million incrementally if there was a real need to get money for some major problem. And there are a lot of communities that are not in that position. So I think that I just want to leave you with a couple things. One, the staff is a phenomenal staff. And two, we've got really solid financial position, and the future is extremely bright. So it was an honor to serve as a KICA board member for the past couple of years, and I thank everybody for showing up.
There are a couple items of new business on the agenda. The first is a special award drawing. We offer an enticement of a $500 drawing to get people to vote. I hope inflation is not putting pressure on that, and that's why we only got 51%. But I'm pleased to report that the winner, randomly drawn at the beginning of the meeting, are Mr. and Mrs. I think this is right, Salemino on Shipwatch Road. So congratulations to them. Okay, I want to announce the, yeah, congratulations. I want to announce the election results, both for the director election as well as for the covenant amendment. We had 3 candidates apply to fill 2 seats for outgoing director Dave Singer, as well as the seat left vacant by former director Bruce Stemmerman's resignation from the board last year. The candidate biography information was published in Digest, in your annual meeting report, and on the KICA website. In addition, we posted video interviews with each candidate online, as well as a video of each candidate's speech at Meet the Candidates Night. Electronic and telephone voting ended at 5 p.m. on February 23rd, and proxies were then sent electronically with a cutoff date of Thursday, March 1st at noon, which was yesterday. Votes were certified by votenow.com prior to today's meeting. And at today's meeting, we had 3 people vote in person. I'm pleased to announce that your new board members are Mike Feldman and Sue Schaefer. I want to thank all the candidates for their willingness to serve and congratulate Mike and Sue, and certainly look forward to working with you. On the covenant amendment, we had weighted votes in favor, 5,297, 656 against, 90% in favor, 10% against, and so the covenant amendment passes. The final item on our agenda before member comments or before adjournment is our member comment session. And I want to remind you that if you have a question or a comment, to please come to the microphone, give your name and property address, and offer your comment. If we're able to answer your question right away, we'll do so. If some additional research is necessary, we'll respond as quickly as possible. While comments are welcome on any KICA topic, the elected board members are specifically interested in hearing member input on the recent proposal by KICA Partners to create a vehicular connection between the Timbers parcel and Duneside Road. The board consensus is that it has concerns about the proposal as currently permitted or proposed, but this is the first opportunity for public comment and would like to hear from the community, specifics from the community. We will not comment today on the legalities of the matter, which are complex. And before we invite any comments, if we could just put that graphic on the screen so people can actually see what is proposed. And we'll just point out a couple of key features to orient you, and then we can take it down. This is Beachwalker Drive right here. The entrance to Beachwalker Park is approximately in this location. This is Duneside Road, which currently terminates right here. These are the Duneside units. And this is the Timbers project that's under construction right now. All of this other land around here is for future development opportunities. And then some have just asked where is the location of the parcel that was involved in the parcel trade last year. It's down here well away from what is being talked about today. Essentially what KICA Partners has proposed is to install a new security gate in this location and to open up this connection to Duneside Road. Before I turn it over, I'll just ask if there are any just questions about the geography here. Yes, Marilyn.
On that diagram, you have Juneside Road as being straight. I believe that's not true. It in fact has a severe curve.
I think that the inside road does go straight for a short period, and then certainly it does turn back this way. I don't know where on this sketch, but. Any other just questions about the geography here?
That would mean a third gate, a third entrance gate?
Well, I assume you mean the two at the main gate and then this one. That's correct. I'm sorry? All of this land, timbers, this future development, all of this are members of KICA, will be members of KICA. That's something that we don't know yet. That's something we don't know yet. We're in discussions with them about how this might work, what people's thoughts are on the type of access that would or would not be allowed, and that's one of the reasons why the elected board members are interested in hearing feedback on questions like that. Any other thing just specific to what you're looking at? Yes, in the way back.
The gate on Beach Walk, would that be a manned gate?
I believe the current proposal is that would not be manned, that an electronic system would be deployed with cameras and things like that for monitoring.
Where's the pool? Isn't there a pool on the inside?
It's probably, is it about in that location, John? Okay.
What was the question?
The question was, where is the pool for the regimes over in that area, Sparrow Pond, and Duneside Road does this, and it's somewhere back in here. Yes, sir.
Has the developer been plan on preparing a traffic study to see how much traffic is going to come that way in, or from the main gate around the other way? Did they plan on doing that?
I don't know if a traffic study has been done. It has. We've not seen a traffic study. Again, just geography here. We'll take comments in just a minute. Yes, sir. I just want to make sure everyone understands what they're looking at and what they're commenting on. Yes, ma'am.
With future development, do you have any idea how many houses or how many units would be going in there and what kind of traffic that would generate?
The number of units that can be added are controlled by the zoning for those properties, and I think it's safe to say that if you add them all up, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of between 125 to 170, higher, Craig? 150, 175? They would have to request that KICA take ownership of the road.
So basically what they want to do is they want to have a gate out there by the public park that they're okay with Kewall residents having access to the inside. Is that accurate?
I think your question is their proposal would allow Kiowa residents to come, any Kiowa resident to come through that gate? Is that your question? That's correct. That's right, and I think it's an important point that security gate that's shown in that location has always been part of what they have proposed in terms of the development of this area. What has changed is the desire to open up this road connection here. So that gate location was always envisioned in that location, and it would serve that part of the community.
My whole point is that they own the land and everything, but it seems like they keep creating these
Well, I think that the proposal to open up Duneside Road would suggest that it would all be connected. I need to stress that this isn't KICA's proposal, this Kiowa Partners proposal, and I can't speak to all the specifics, but I'm just trying to make sure that everyone understands what they're looking at and what they're commenting on and questioning.
I am curious about what KICA's role is in this. I understand you can only either encourage it or discourage it, but you're saying they're going to be KICA members, and yet you don't know if you're going to have to control the infrastructure.
Control the infrastructure?
Right. In other words, are you going to have to do all the repairs on the infrastructure? You're saying they could ask you to.
At the end of 2015, the right of the developer to give KICA roads, infrastructure, what have you, without KICA's consent expired. And KICA has not accepted any additional conveyances since then, because we've not yet developed a policy under what conditions we would accept infrastructure that we don't have to take. And so that's something that the board is wrestling with. So it's a complicated situation.
You have no stand at this point, so you might well have to take over the infrastructure. Or you might want to size and
It's a complex issue, and we start to touch on some of the legalities that I'm not prepared at this point to discuss in an open forum. Yes, sir.
I'm just going to comment that you're in a difficult situation because there's a lot of information you don't have. So getting comments on the situation from the audience is unable to come to that information. The board doesn't have that information. It's kind of an open issue. So it's very difficult to convey our opinions if we can't get those answers. And as I said, you're in a situation where it's very difficult for you to get feedback from that meeting.
It is a difficult situation. Yes, ma'am.
who would be responsible for the maintenance of that gate? Would it be,
Depends on who ultimately owns it.
or would that, because they're going to develop that property. Now, is that gate going to be a gate restricted to the development in that property, such as they have it in that cove? Or is it going to be a gate like we have the main gate and the secondary gate?
The answer is, I don't know. The initial thoughts conveyed by Kiowa Partners to us was that this would be a gate that would be accessible by anyone who lives on Kiowa, but obviously the primary beneficiaries would be people who lived in those newly developed areas. There are all sorts of ways to decide who gets to come through, whether it's just people who live in a specific area, whether it's no commercial traffic, whether it's no resort guests, I mean, all of those types of things. Now, I think their initial thought was that it would be open to any KICA member to use. Now, if you live in the preserve, it's not likely that you would ever find much benefit of turning right on Beach Walker, going down there and coming through that gate. But their initial proposal was just that any KICA member could use the gate. Now, this is so complicated because it involves the town planning commission. It involves connecting a new road to a road that KICA already owns. There are a lot of moving parts here. And one of the things that we're grateful for is that it was pulled from the planning commission agenda, I think for later this week, and gives us an opportunity to, number one, try to wrap our arms around what it is, understand what our options are. And the gentleman was right. I mean, I understand it's hard to provide input, but we want to hear what the specific concerns are and whether or not there are ways to mitigate those. And whether or not there's a way to stop it or not is a later discussion, but the elected board was very clear in their instruction to me to solicit public comment today, since this is really the first time there has been a gathering of people to be able to talk about this. Yes, ma'am.
KICA have any benefit or see any benefit for the rest of us with the 4,000 people? I mean, have you come up with any reasons that it would benefit us?
You know, I showed you in my presentation that there's going to be a significant amount of construction around the resort properties, really for 3 years solid. It's not just the road work, but it's the construction of the clubhouse and what ultimately happens on the old end site and so forth. So, you know, if you live back in one of those neighborhoods that require you to pass all of that construction, it's arguable that it'd be nice to have a way to avoid that. But, you know, in terms of, I mean, there's no financial benefit. You know, if we take any of this, it's an expense. Yes, Mike.
Am I still a citizen?
You're still a citizen.
If you look at this, this is a comment first and then a question. You can see, if you were the developer, why you would want to do part of this, why you would want to secure those are high value properties, and gated entrance makes a lot of sense. I do recall that in the past, the security was there and the cut through was not there. And I'm wondering if someone could explain, and actually the partners actually said in the prior meeting that they have no intention to open the road. And I'm wondering if someone could explain what's changed. And the security's still there. You can do the security without busting through to do the site. So what's changed in the thinking that now this has to be opened up?
What has been shared with us is that as the Timbers project has moved through its development process and they're actively engaged in sales efforts, that the traffic issues on Beachwalker Drive, particularly in the summer, when cars do back up at the entrance to the gate once the parking lot is full, and so they stack on the road. It's better than it used to be. It sometimes in the past would extend all the way out to the parkway, and so if you lived at Inlet Cove or were trying to come to KICA's offices, you couldn't come down the road. Now, a lot of work has gone into trying to improve that. The town has taken the lead on getting additional deputy help and things of that nature, but it still does stack up sometimes at the entrance to the park, which then makes it hard for someone who is trying to sell an expensive piece of property because they get stuck waiting to even access their property. And so that's what's been expressed, is that the traffic on Beachwalker is the primary driver of this. Yes, sir.
I just wondered, did you or any of the board members or town officials have knowledge that this was coming during both the swap negotiations and during the West Beach rezoning presentation?
No.
Okay. Well then, can I comment now, or we still just questions?
Go ahead.
Well, it's just, I don't understand the technicalities and the legalities, none of this do. But this just strikes me, the timing of it, is just not right. I mean, in my humble view, there is unquestionably incredible economic benefit accruing to the partners and to the owners of the Timbers development from access to KICA. I mean, when you're selling something out
Let me stop you right there. I want to make sure that it's clear. These people have access to Kiowa. That's not in question.
With an immediate outside of the door. Right now, they have to go down to the main gate, correct?
That right, but when you say access to, I just want to make sure you understand that these are KICA members.
Well, my only concern, and I don't know that there's anything that can be done about it, but the community association might consider, exacting some kind of compensation if in fact you're going to proceed with this. Because, because the obvious, I listened for, and then I'll stop right there. I listened for 6 months during the swap negotiations. I listened to you, whom I respect, and other board members and town officials tell us, look us right in the face, that that property up there on the beach had no value. They were swapping. It is an oceanfront parcel with immediate access to Kiowa. And so I just want that concern to be out there. What you do about it will be what you decide.
Just to be clear, we never said it had no value. We said it had no value to KICA. It has tremendous value. It's worth $10 million or so. I mean, it's worth a lot of money. But it had no value to KICA because KICA does not have development rights. Just wanted to be clear that we did not say it had no value.
But I'm talking about in relation to the value of what was swapped.
I've sort of stomped all over my own rule about only talking about the geography, but I guess we'll keep going. Yes, ma'am.
Geography question. I'm trying to understand where the proposed security gate is actually going. Right now, there is a electronic gate at the Timbers that has been there before. It was the Sea Beach entrance. Is that where this gate is?
It's somewhere beyond where that existing gate is located on that road. That's a new road. I think the name of it is Cape Point Road.
So it's not back on Beach Walk?
No,
It's in there.
that's correct. Yes.
One more final comment. I just hope that whatever you negotiate with KGP, that it's permanent at the time of negotiation, because I think, if they want access to them, they reside there, and then once they get that, then they may want something else to gain, some other access. So I just hope that the board considers that.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
It's gonna be an unmanned gate. We know what happens with an unmanned gate. So I think this is gonna be a weak link in the chain of security for the whole of the island. We have, all this public beach traffic mixed with the Timbers. And it's a safety issue. I mean, I live down in Sparrow Pond, and I see families taking, full carts, kids with things heading to the ocean. You have that much traffic going around there. It's going to be very dangerous for children and families, I think. You have beer trucks going to Timbers or restaurant trucks and things like that around that corner. It's a blind corner. But security-wise, the way I see it is if you have an unmanned gate there, it's going to cause problems.
Okay. Yes.
Actually, just your point, that they're worried about the traffic on Beachwater. Now you want to trade that, or they do, to make more traffic on Duneside, which is simply unfair to those people who have been on Duneside all that time. I don't even live there. I just think it's appalling. Me too. I agree.
Mary Ann?
On the original plans, was the road to go through?
Yeah.
It was. So when all this discussion was taking place about the parcel trade, that road was supposed to go through.
What you see on the screen is a road that does not connect to Duneside, and that's what was the initial plat that was approved by the town's planning commission.
And the last one that was approved?
That is the last one that was approved.
Okay, so it showed that the road was open.
Closed. A revised plat that opens the road has been submitted to the town for planning commission review. And that's what was to be on the agenda this week, but will now be postponed until, I believe, April's meeting.
Yeah, I just want to continue. I feel compelled to say this because it's something that's always in the air but no one addresses. Every time the partners come to KICA members for something, hackles go up. I don't know the partners, I don't know the people, I don't have to feel this. But like, all of a sudden coming back now and saying they want the connection on the road, after people recently were told there was no connection, is an example of why people don't trust people. Don't trust the partners. And I hate to say that because, but I know, I've seen the reaction from people, just as soon as it's somebody from there, people react.
In the back, and then we'll come to you next, ma'am.
Just as a comment, I think that should KICA for some reason decide that this is the appropriate thing to grant this right, that it shouldn't be granted without complete disclosure and commitment from development partners to any development that's going to happen to the west of this. It should be a comprehensive agreement that this is it, or exactly what's going to happen anywhere to the west of this connection, because clearly this could become a point of access for even more that's going to happen. I think you know the things I'm referring to. So I think any agreement that might or might not have to happen with this should require a definitive commitment from partners.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any restrictions or anything on the density of this new development? It just blows my mind that there's going to be, did you say 225 new residents? Where my place in Sparrow Pond was held up for 3 years because the extension was too close to a tree. It eventually got approved, but I think we supported all of Charleston, South Carolina, with all the people that had approved. But they're going to put 225 people in there. Are there any restrictions as to what they can take down and what they can't, how high they build?
Craig, who's the appropriate town staff person that can review the zoning requirements or limitations with
Just if there are or not. He doesn't have to.
Well, our planning department handles all the zoning, they can answer all those questions, but if you would want to call Stephanie Tillerson, our town administrator, or call me,
the mayor is suggesting Stephanie Tillerson, who's the town.
or you call me second, but call her first. But I'd be happy, I understand this intimately, I'd be happy to explain to you anything to do with the zoning in that particular area.
Will?
Yeah, just a comment. Jimmy, it seems like it might be better for everybody if there was a plan to increase the capacity on Beachwater Drive. Is there not been any consideration to widen that road so that you could handle more traffic that way?
I don't know. Beachwalker Drive, I guess fortunately, I'm glad to say, is not owned by KICA. There have been a number of meetings over the last couple of years that involved people from KICA, the Parks and Recreation Commission, the town, the developers, Inlet Cove, all talking about this Beachwalker Drive issue. And I wish I could say that there was some obvious silver bullet solution, but if there is, no one has come up with it yet.
Maybe that should be explored before this other issue is resolved.
I think Craig would like to.
I would say in that respect that the town currently has a bid out to add an additional turn lane into Beachwalker, a dedicated lengthy turn lane. The idea being that will now give a lot of the cars that currently line up to get into the park, will get them off of the main street and into separate areas. That is out there.
I don't know if everyone could hear that, but what the mayor said is the town has put out a bid to add a right turn lane off of Beachwalker into Beachwalker Park with the hope that that will relieve some of the pressure of the cars stacking on Beachwalker. Yes, sir.
I think this is a simple traffic issue. Duneside Road services 100 Sparrow Pond cottages that very few people occupy on a year-round basis. It services Duneside units. That's all Duneside Road services since 1976.
Do you-
I'd like to make some comments whenever.
Sure.
How does this pointer work, Henry?
It's the green button.
Green button. Good afternoon.
Use the mic, please.
Good afternoon. My name is John Connolly, and I reside at 1020 Scalp Court in the Sparrow Pond community here on Kiowa.
John, use the microphone.
Okay. Sparrow Pond was one of the first, if not the first, community that the Kuwaitis built back in the mid-70s. I serve as the treasurer of the Kiowa Island Cottage Owners Association. That comprises Sparrow Pond and Greens Lake, and I have owned my property there for 16 years. I guess I've kind of read this little speech that I prepared to my wife a few times, and she keeps telling me to calm down. And so I will tell you today that I'm not angry. I am damn angry. Duneside Road, and the problem with this map is you don't see what comes beyond here. This is the road, and it continues just a little bit more and makes literally just about a 90-degree turn. And this little triangular piece in here is the Sparrow Pond Pool. Now that pool has been there ever since the community was built. It is the path. Duneside Road comes, Duneside Road comes up here. It's not a straight shot. It's a winding street. Line of sight is almost non-existent in a lot of places. In peak season, that road is the main thoroughfare. There are no bike paths. There are no bike trails. That's the way to the beach. That's the way to the pool. And quite honestly, it's really very exciting in the summer because people coming down, you've got the parents pushing the carriages, pushing the strollers, you've got kids on bikes, kids on skateboards. Everybody's in the street, but they're having a good time. And that's what the Kuwaitis expected. It's an old-fashioned beach community, and that's what it should remain. The proposed plat that they recently submitted takes this road and bangs it right through that wall, and it becomes a thoroughfare. Now, you can see on here, it includes the timbers and all of this other, and quite honestly, I didn't realize it was as many as 170. My guess was 120. And everybody should know that about 12 to 18 months ago, when this plat was submitted, the Planning Commission pushed back and said, no, you're not going to go through that road. And the developers agreed. So now you see what they approved, and the road comes down here, but it curves away. It curves away. I'm telling you, the volume of people walking on this thing, you're just asking for an accident and a tragedy. You're just asking for it. When the road comes down here, it ends, and then you make that sharp left turn or sharp right turn heading west. And this pool here, the entrance to the pool is about 20 or 25 feet from the curb. When you come around the curve right now, this area is all bike racks. And when I was on the board back in 2011 or so and 12, Shannon White will remember this. I sent her pictures of this area. The bikes were all over the street, bikes, burleys, you name it, they were everywhere. And Shannon, being as good as she is, the next thing we knew, we had more bike racks. And I'm telling you, those bike racks fill up, and we still don't have enough bike racks in peak periods. Coming from this direction here, where the road now ends, you come along here, and you see these Duneside townhomes. There are a total of 12 units. 12 units now use this road. Instead of 12, you want it to be 170 plus 12? That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I have seen more kids come out of this pool, hop on a bike, and they're in that street in nothing flat. And you're just asking for a tragedy for a family when this kid comes out, gets on that bike, and gets hit by a car.
And I've been there for 16 years. I've seen it happen time and time again. Now, I know the KICA board has sought some advice from its legal counsel, and apparently from everything that I've read so far, it sounds like the lawyer seems to be indicate that maybe they have a right to do this. Well, I'll tell you, we all have rights. I have a right to buy a gun and use it. I have a right to buy alcohol and use it. But with rights come responsibilities. And you have the responsibility of to not harm anybody when you exercise your rights. And I'm telling you, this will cause irreparable harm to our community, and it will cause a tragedy to some family who loses a child with all of this traffic coming through this neighborhood. This road was never designed to carry this kind of load. Never. Now, I know the board members feel somewhat like their hands are tied, you know, they're limited, they maybe have limited options. But I'm here to tell you that Sparrow Pond, Greens Lake, Duneside 1 and Duneside 2 are totally united on this. We want to hear from the KICA board loud and clear that this is wrong. That's what we want to hear. We don't want to hear maybe this, maybe that. It doesn't matter what that is. We want to hear the board say, this is wrong, it's a terrible proposal. The other thing that really, really bothers me about this is when I joined the KICA board in 2011, one of the first committees that I was put on is West Beach Revitalization. And that's what Jimmy talked about before. And you know, it's been a long number of years we've been waiting for that resort to finally get its act together, and now they have. So the light at the end of the tunnel is here, except now they want to do this. It's really just sort of unbelievable. When KICA sent its annual notice in 2012 to its members, I'm going to quote you what it said relative to the West Beach Revitalization Program. The idea behind the project is to bring new life to these neighborhoods, making Kiowa's first neighborhoods more lively, marketable, and beautiful than ever, with the long-term goal of enhancing property values throughout the West Beach area, ultimately benefiting all of Kiowa. Please don't let these new developers drive a wedge right through the heart of our community. This road runs not on the edge of our community, it goes right through the center of it. Please don't let them replace parents and children walking on their way to the beach with traffic volumes that this quiet neighborhood street was never designed for or built for. Please don't let them make a mockery of the West Beach Revitalization Program that so many people have worked so hard to achieve. Sparrow Pond and Greens Lake and Duneside Townhomes look forward to your strong, I'm speaking to the board, your strong public denunciation of the developer's plan to exercise their so-called right, which will result in irreparable harm to their neighbors. To everyone here, to everyone on the video feed, and to all of our owners, I ask you please send a message to the KICA board, the Planning Commission, the town, and Timbers Kiowa, saying you are strongly opposed to this. And I'm including Timbers Kiowa because in my view, they are the primary driver behind this. They don't have any understanding of or regard for our community. I'm sorry I'm angry, but I'm damn angry. Thank you.
I was going to try to talk about boardwalks or something.
Hello, my name is Marilyn Larrick, and I live at 1082 Terrapin Court. That's part of Sparrow Pond, which Sparrow Pond is part of the Sparrow Pond Greens Lake Communities, Kiowa Island Community or Cottage Owners Association. I'm its vice president. I also have a few other things that I think are pertinent in my background, and that includes that I'm a board-certified pediatrician, I'm a board-certified anesthesiologist, I have a fellowship in pediatric and intensive care, and as such, I have been involved in multiple resuscitations and the care of children who are traumatized. And I wanted to point out that the mission statement of KICA is to create a beautiful, safe, well-maintained, and friendly community. Do we want our visitors who are unfamiliar with the community to spend their quality time they thought was going to be a lovely vacation on Kiowa, and instead they're down at MUSC in the intensive care unit, if they're lucky? That's what the outcome will be if we do this. The Duneside Road, that's conveniently elongated to make it look straight, but as John has very eloquently spoken about, we have a 90-degree blind turn immediately before our pool, which is located in that notch. The kids all come. The kids love it there. They ride their bicycles. There is no room there to build a leisure trail, even if we wanted it. You have the small little matter of Sparrow Pond. I guess we could build maybe another bridge, like the bridge that went near Falcon Point that took so long and so much of the resources of KICA, but you also have no property to build it on. This is an accident that will happen. It won't be waiting to happen. It will happen. We are, with all that traffic, you're going to end up with severe accidents, and it won't be once, it'll be twice. And in addition to the right to connect, and whatever KP's rights are, KICA has a right to consider, if it doesn't want to consider the safety of the families and the visitors that come to our island, maybe it should consider its liability, because you have now been duly warned about the safety situation here. If you should decide to make that connection between Southern Pines and Duneside Road, then this is the price that needs to be paid. We need to have elevated walkways for the pedestrian and bike traffic that's going to go down to the first boardwalk entrance. These are similar to what we see down by Ashley Road by MUSC. Not very pretty looking. Will slow down those cars, perhaps. We need to have flashing stop signs. And we need to have more traffic bumps by the pool before and after that curve. And then the traffic studies that the resort very conscientiously did, as they were very thoughtfully planning on the West Beach extension and renovation, they did not include anything having to do with all this KP development, because Duneside Road was not going to be draining all of that development. And while the plan is for 125 to 150 units, I think we're forgetting about the 4.62 acres that are going to be built, as well as what's going to happen out on the other end of Cape Point roads on Captain Sam's. But the main issue is you are going to kill kids with that traffic. And I don't want to be the one trying to resuscitate those children before our fire department comes. I urge the KICA board to do everything possible to stand against this development. Thank you.
I would love if there's a way for us to move on to general KICA issues, because I'm sure there are people who would like to ask questions about something else. So maybe the best way for me to do this is if you would just by show of hands express if your position is aligned with what was shared by John and Marilyn on behalf of that owners association, just so that the board can. Okay, thank you very much. I think what we will do is we'll ask, we'll now go back to just general member comments. Again, please, when you come to the microphone, state your name, your KICA address, and as I said, if there's an easy way to answer you right away, we'll do it. If not, we'll be in touch as soon as possible.
Wendy Kulick, 38 Marsh Edge Lane. First of all, not just Will and some of the other KICA employees, but every time there's been any sort of survey conducted on this island, the people who score the highest are KICA employees, and they deserve our thanks and our appreciation. And Will, especially, for the Sea Level Rise Committee of the town, arranged a presentation the other day by an engineering firm that was so informative, scary as hell, but very, very informative, and we should all be very grateful for that. For years, KICA committees were considered one of the best ways to learn about KICA and its operations and to recruit people for board seats. Being a committee member was like playing in the minor leagues of baseball. In fact, many past property owner directors served on one or more KICA committees before serving on the KICA Board of Directors. And I would urge KICA to reinstate its committees and provide an opportunity for more direct property owner involvement and participation in the association. Jimmy, you referred earlier this year to the 4.62 acres that was voted on earlier, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on that. But a number of property owners and myself voiced objections to the process that was used for that voting. Ballots were mailed out without any real explanation of what was going on, and people were urged, vote right away, without any sort of real explanation. We had a sales pitch given. There was no pro and con objective discussion of the benefits and disadvantages of doing so. And so my suggestion, I would urge people, I would urge the boards. We all heard people on the IKEA list, in person. I know I heard privately from a lot of people who urged people. They voiced buyer's remorse. If I'd known all this, I would never have voted the way I did. In the future, whenever there is any sort of issue for which property owners are asked to vote in a referendum or a property owner director election, before a single ballot goes out, present the issues. If it's an election, present the candidates, get everything out there, have at least 3 forums where people can hear the pros and cons before a single ballot goes out to people. And I think it will improve the voting process. The other thing, I've probably been commenting on this at KICA board meetings for the almost 30 years that Tom and I have lived here full time, and I won't have to do it much longer, hopefully, but the town can only go into executive session under certain conditions. That's law. It's a municipality. KICA isn't a municipal government, but it does have a lot of the responsibilities that a municipal government would otherwise have. And so I would urge the new board to again consider only go into executive session for personnel, legal, and contractual issues. Yes, I understand it's easier for board members to speak freely when you're behind closed doors, but we are a membership organization. And I think the members deserve to hear the opinions of the people we elect to serve on the board. Thank you for your consideration.
Any other member comments, questions? Yes, ma'am, a few.
That's just a quick question. The pool is not heated but plumbed for heating the new pool. And what process can be done to help that issue? So we can get it heated and use it more months of the year?
More money. What we wanted to avoid was having to do a massive retrofit if the board determined at some point in the future that it was worth spending the money to heat the pool. And I think we were trying to get this project planned and underway between two seasons with a very aggressive schedule. And so we put as much as we felt like we could afford in this plan, and I think that's something that's up for discussion. I mean, we wouldn't have plumbed it that way if we didn't think it was a possibility in the future to do it. I don't have a better answer other than just more money and a commitment to spend. I'm sorry? Well, I'd like to get it open, and then we'll we'll figure it out. Yes, ma'am. I can't hear the question. If water aerobics will resume at the sandcastle when the sandcastle is able to be reopened. Possibly, yes. Okay, thank you.
The roundabout you're building,
The resorts building.
all the condominiums on Shipwatch will be inaccessible during that time?
Oh no, they'll be accessible. The road will be rerouted around what is currently the straw market, and it'll be very clearly marked and traffic control and so forth. Other questions, comments? Well, this is your swan song. We're on item number 12.
Okay. There being no further business, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? This meeting stands adjourned. Thanks for attending.